What is up guys, it's Solheim here, back with another Wrath of the Lich King Classic video. First up, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. The Wrath Classic Beta might be just around the corner, and if it's anything like the TBC Classic Beta, there could be some future beta key giveaways that will be given away to subscribers, so make sure you click that button. Today we are taking a look at some Wrath of the Lich King Classic news, as we have an interview with Brian Birmingham from the Classic WoW team, where they talked about some really interesting topics regarding Wrath Classic, answering many questions that I know the community has for Wrath. Exactly what's happening will probably become even more clear, or more and more clear throughout the Wrath Classic Beta, but at least these questions and answers gives us an indication of what they want to do and which direction they want to go. So let's get into it. We have a lot of different questions and categories to go through, so we'll do this on a categorical basis. First up, botting. So the question, Death Knights being able to be created without requiring a level 55 character, unfortunately also means that bot accounts will be able to start at level 55 and can make the botting issue way worse. Is the team aware of this possibility? And is there any measures to crack down on botting in Wrath Classic? So here's Brian Birmingham's answer. We are, and it's one of the reasons that you can only make one Death Knight without the restrictions. We don't want to create a situation where you would suddenly have an army of farming alts on realms all over the region. Players' reports of botters seen in the open world is one of the things that helps us track them down, and we have an improved right-click reporting system going into modern World of Warcraft now, which will also be in Wrath of the Lich King Classic as well. The new system is intended to standardize the categories that you report people for, so it's easier to track down and report track down a report of botting versus cheating of a different kind. It will capture some additional information automatically as well that is meant for helping us work on it at the scale that the problem occurs on. So just to comment on this, it sounds like they are making an improved reporting tool for retail, which will also be put into Wrath of the Lich King Classic, directly relying on player reports to combat botting, which in my opinion is not enough in the slightest to even begin to make a dent in fixing the issue. Dungeon farming bots are and always have been a problem, and cannot really be reported by people, as you cannot right-click report them in many cases. With modern methods of logging out, you can even reset the instance from inside the instance, so you never have to exit the instance, making bots incredibly difficult to find unless you actively look for them and literally track them over time, which I have done in the past. I would love to see them hire more active game masters to actively monitor and moderate their game, as well as have some active monitoring on players who purchase the boosts, and most botters are buying those boosts. Long story short, there's so much more that they can do, and that they could have said in this section, but let's be real here, it is in their best economical interest to do as little as possible when it comes to fixing the botting situation. It costs money to hire people and fix the problem, and they are literally losing subscription revenue from those bots, or from banning those bots, so they would then be spending money to lose money. Speaking of spending money though, let's thank today's sponsor. Myself. I've made and published my own gold guide for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, which contains gold farms, investments, how to make gold in general, making gold with professions, and a lot more. If you want to know as much as possible about gold making in Wrath, this is definitely a guide that you want to check out, and by purchasing the guide you will also receive all of the future updates for free, always keeping you up to date with the most relevant gold making information. And right now you can also get it for 50% off by using the code Solheim, so make sure you check it out through the link down below in the video description. Next up then, dual talent specialization. So the question, it was mentioned in a tweet that dual talent specialization will be in Wrath Classic, but with restrictions. Can you elaborate on these restrictions, and why does the team feel that it needs to be restricted? So Brian Birmingham's answer looks like this. I will start by saying that we are no longer considering any new restrictions beyond what was originally part of the feature. You won't be able to change specs in combat, or during battlegrounds, or an arena match, and it will have a cast time, and empty your your resources, so that it's not something that you can do on a whim. Those are all things that were originally true, and that's how we'll ship it in this time as well. Next topic, changing raid lockouts in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Here's the question. The team talked about possibly changing the raid lockout to reduce the amount of time players feel obligated to run the same raid instance in a given week. The issue with this is the available loot across the different raid difficulties and sizes is vastly different, so how will the team address this? And here is Brian Birmingham's answer. The idea of changing the raid lockout the raid lockout came out of some negative memories of running Trial of the Crusader 4 times in a week, and we think that is where the problem is most apparent. It meant that players stopped running Ulduar permanently or prematurely, replacing it entirely with various configurations of Trial of the Crusader. That was caused by both having access to all 4 difficulties each week, and the fact that even the 10-person normal gear from Trial of the Crusader was better than almost anything from Ulduar. The dramatic acceleration of gear in TOC or TOC also led directly to some of the problems described by the developers at the time, such as Chill of the Throne in Icecrown. So we are considering changes here, but want to tread carefully. At a minimum, we are looking to have normal and heroic modes share a lockout, but heroic modes do not exist until Trial of the Crusader. We might try to make them activatable. How do I say that? Activatable hard modes like Ulduar was, that would inherently make them share a lockout as they did in Ulduar. We are interested in hearing feedback on the topic. Having multiple difficulties of the same raid was new in Wrath of the Lich King, and as a result we tried lots of things with raid lockouts throughout the course of the expansion and the ones that followed. Whatever we decide, we would like it to be the same system throughout instead of having it to change patch to patch like it did back in OG Wrath. And the second to last topic for today, pre-nerf and post-nerf boss encounters in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. So the question looked like this. One of the most exciting aspects of the upcoming TBC Phase 5, well, it's not upcoming anymore, but TBC Phase 5, is the pre-nerf boss encounters in Sunwell Plateau. Is this a trend that will carry on to Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and can players expect pre-nerf encounters for each raid? So, in Burning Crusade, a lot of the encounters, especially in the early part of the game, were launched in an incredibly difficult state, and then later nerfed deliberately to allow players to catch up. We introduced the pre-nerf difficulties because it would have felt like a big miss for that expansion to skip the harder versions of the bosses. That wasn't really the case as much with Wrath of the Lich King. There weren't as many catch-up nerfs outside of the few outliers such as health nerfs in Naxxramas and direct skips to Saphiron and Kel'Thuzad. We plan to review those outliers and see if it makes sense to ship those in their OG state, but it's not something that we plan to build a pre/post system around this time, since there aren't really as many noteworthy changes as there were in the Burning Crusade. On the other hand, we are looking forward to the original progressive nerf aura that got stronger each week in ICC. You were originally able to talk to an NPC to remove the progressive nerf aura entirely, and one thing we are considering is making the number of stacks selectable, so if your group wants to try it with a little bit less of a nerf each week, you can tune it down a bit at a time until it reaches its most powerful form. So the final topic, and probably the one that many of you have been waiting for a comment about, removing the dungeon finder in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. So here is what the question looks like. One of the hot buttons issues amongst the community is the removal of the dungeon finder. One of the central pieces of the conversation is what happens to emblems if dungeon finder is removed, what type of system is the team considering to help with LFG chat, and lastly, would dungeon finder be okay if it wasn't cross-realm? Can you share any information on the topic? So we do have a comment from Brian on this. First, I want to emphasize that our goal is to provide a tool that makes it easy to find groups without sacrificing human-to-human interaction. World of Warcraft has had numerous versions of group finding tools over the years, and there are lessons we can learn from all of them, including Random Dungeon Finder. We are looking at modern World of Warcraft's pre-made group finder, and Burning Crusade Classic looking for group dungeon tool for inspiration and ideas. This is actually good. I would love to see like a combination of those two. I don't particularly like either one of them, but something in the middle could be great. Looking first at the modern tools, we like the inviting and streamlined UI flow that helps you find the activity you're looking for. We also think it makes sense to declare your role in the group, so it's clear which roles you already have and what you're still looking for. We will probably borrow those ideas, but as you alluded to, cross-realm grouping is one of our concerns with the modern tools. When you are unlikely to see your groupmates again, it can make your interactions feel more transactional, which can inadvertently encourage other negative social behaviors. With the Burning Crusade Classic tool, one thing we like is that you can advertise your availability without signing up to organize the group. It is a nice way to have of saying, I'm available, but I don't want to lead. We've heard from some players that they really like engaging with the group tool that way, so we want to support that behavior as well. The biggest problem with Burning Crusade's tool is just that it's not widely used, so we would like to make it more enticing by streamlining its interface or adding an incentive to try it. You also asked about emblems. It is important to remember that emblems dropped from bosses in both dungeons and raids throughout the entire expansion. Prior to the introduction of the group finder, dungeon finder, in patch 3.3, there was also a daily quest targeting a specific dungeon that awarded bonus emblems, which is what the random dungeon finder bonus replaced. We are currently planning to restore that daily quest bonus. As for the LFG channel, we know some of the larger realms see a lot of spam in that chat, and we have some ideas for how to clean it up. We are considering bringing over some of the changes in Season of Mastery that reduce the boosting spam there, and should also have more to share on that topic very soon. It is worth noting that the policy against the advertising boost in the Looking for Group channel applies to Classic as well as to Modern WoW. So yeah, guys, that is pretty much it for today's video. The actual interview includes a lot more questions as well, specifically regarding faction balance in both PvE and PvP, and there will be a link to the Wowhead interview down below in the video description. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more Wrath of the Lich King videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.